Hello people and welcome to my channel. Since when I started enjoying sim racing, I built up a certain idea that I wanna show you in this very video. Enjoying sim racing means that I get satisfaction in racing with a simulator, so provided that pedals and wheel with force feedback are the first step for increasing the pleasure, well, what kind of cars may be better? It would be great to be able to put some numbers into a magic formula, but of course we can't do it here. Okay, so here the tools for the experiment are the universally appreciated Assetto Corsa simulator. In this case I've got the so-called Ultimate Edition, plus the good old evergreen R-Factor version 1. As you may have noticed, to narrow the amount of cars to test without reducing the range of differences that affect car behavior, I decided to pick the family of Formula 1 cars from all available eras. If someone's starting to feel the smell of old junks, let me point out that my goal is just to show the differences in cars' behavior. I'm not interested in any operation nostalgia or whatever. Motorsport history is interesting, so anyone is free to search for information out of this video, or even not. So, let's pick the most recent Formula 1 car available here, the Ferrari from 2017, and hit the track. The test area is a set of turns in modern Spa-Francorchamps circuit, from the double gauche down to the chicane before the main straight. The recording will be followed, each recording will be followed by some slow motion, just to have time to check better both the gauges and the way of driving. Okay, let's go. My feeling here is that this car is running on rails, and only minor corrections are allowed. Any big mistake and it's sudden grass or sand, unless you have lightning speed reflexes. Also, many turns are run simply flat out, just a tiny little movement of the wheel with the racing line at these ludicrous speeds. The lateral acceleration here gets out of the G-meter's range, but from my calculations it should go up to 2.6–2.5 Gs as peak. Okay, next car is a 2004 Ferrari with a very similar behavior indeed, as you can plainly see from the recordings. Here I tried to force things a bit in search of the grip limit. Unfortunately, all I got was an awkward save, clearly badly timed, whose result seems to rely more on luck than on skills, though, to be fully honest, I'm not that skilled indeed. And big jump back in time to meet this turbo Lotus 19T. It's 1985. As you can see, speeds are almost similar, as well as cars' behavior. And similarly to the more recent cars we've seen, it features high downforce, coming both from wings and from the shape of the car's bottom. Plus very high grip tires, so high grip that the loss of grip is usually very abrupt, very sudden. So up to now it looks like car racing has to be carried out mainly in this way, with many differences of course between eras, but it looks like the pilot skills that are needed to master Formula 1 cars are more or less of the same kind. So now I ask myself this question: are there better alternatives? Well, let's take another big jump back in time, not so big indeed, just to 1975. This jump brings us to the Ferrari 312T and to the first real alternative. Wings are in place and they look large enough to be relevant, but there isn't the complex study of all aerodynamics so that extreme downforce is generated like it happened from the 80s on. As you can see, I've got to slow down in some turns that previous cars could face at full throttle. Nevertheless, the tires are high grip slick type. Of course, they are slightly worse than more modern cars, but as you can see, any loss of grip still requires rather quick actions. However, some parts of the track that could be considered as slightly bent straight with the previous cars have now become turns, making the track more interesting, more various. I'm skipping the iconic Lotus 72 from 1970 here only because the characteristics were very similar to the previous car. And I will end in 1967 with this definitely different race car, the Lotus 49. No wings at all, no downforce of any kind, threaded tires with decent grip, but surely no match with the slick and short-lasting tires appeared in the early 70s and later. There's an immediate big difference in driving. It's clearly evident that I needed to make many more corrections. Grip is low in relation with the very powerful engine, allowing top speeds over 300 kilometers per hour, which is 200 miles per hour. Though losing and regaining grip here is much less abrupt with these tires. So the continuous corrections, you see, are much easier to manage indeed. In the slow motion replay you can see how I love to search for the limit continuously with the steering while careful management of the throttle controls a sort of pivoting motion around an hypothetical vertical axis. I'm adding here two more short replays from another track to show one more relevant comparison. At such high speeds and with no downforce at all, even the mild crests make a huge difference in the car's grip. So first you're gonna see a 1967 Ferrari on the two corners called Arrabbiata in Mugello circuit, and then you'll see the 1975 Ferrari you saw before in the same corners. The different effects of crests are clearly evident in the difference, in the smaller difference in side acceleration with wings. So not only you gain the pleasure of doing turns literally in every bend without downforce, but the track becomes more, let me say, tri-dimensional, within brackets. There are a lot of occasions to slow down, more than with other cars, then search for the limit, keep at that limit, manage the car's attitude, and then accelerate again. This compared to the cars developed from the 80s on that were more trains on rails. In a few words, there's a lot more of driving, and I think also with some less frustrations, judging by the easiness to regain grip and control. Okay, I didn't skip the Lotus 25 here, that was born just 5 years before, because even though the way of driving is rather similar, the regulations made them pretty different from the after 66. Because power was just half in 1965 and before, because engines were 1.5 liter capacity only instead of 3 liters, with a less relevant weight difference. Nevertheless, these narrow-wheeled cigars were capable of 270 kilometers an hour, which is roughly 170 miles per hour, while the tires, still at a poorer development degree, allowed the maximum grip same as the cars we commonly drive on open roads today. In my feelings, these cars are even more to be driven, given even more pleasure as a consequence. While I'd say that the ones of 1967 were more to be tamed indeed. Okay, the last in this parade is going to be the Maserati 250F from the 50s. Okay, if I could measure the satisfaction at driving by the grin on my face as soon as I got the hang at managing the car's attitude, while the ones of the 60s put a big smile on my face, the ones of the 50s made me giggle and sometimes even laugh. Okay, let's be honest, the balance of such cars is intrinsically wrong. Front 2.5 liters engine, rear-wheel drive, and the tires with the performance of the ones used for the Trabant cars, okay, this all is a good recipe to literally play with slides, drift, counter steering, etc., but less for racing, in my humble opinion. Don't get me wrong, now I'm not saying that it's not pleasant racing with them. Sure, they are much better than any car with high downforce and slick, super sticky tires. Though having the cars from the 60s available, my personal way of judging this, I'd say that the ones from the 50s give great satisfaction at driving, while the ones of the 60s give more satisfaction at racing. Okay, it's a really slight difference, and I think anyone could totally disagree with me and go with his own idea. Wait a minute, where are we now? This track looks a bit too dirty to be a Formula 1 indeed. Yeah, true, this is officially not a Formula 1, this is Autocross. And instead of Assetto Corsa, we've now switched to R-Factor, in this case because of the availability of the mod. As you can see, there's very much to drive here, pretty similar to what we've seen with the Formula 1 of the 60s or 50s. And the shape of this car, curiously, reminds of Formula 1 cars indeed. It's like a Formula 1 on dirt tracks. There are different categories within the general autocross definition, to be honest, but of course here I chose the two-wheel drive buggies with almost open wheels and 1.6 liters engine that in this case better match some similarity with Formula 1 cars. Finally, let's head for the conclusion. If racing pleasure has got to do with driving more and be less frustrated, sure this hit parade of mine could become sort of a hint for retrieving those old junks that maybe went soon abandoned by many players because they looked slow and awkward, and discovered that the satisfaction in sim racing might be not so strictly related with pure speed. Talking about pure speed, check this out. It's evident how nearly 350 kilometers an hour give a good perception of incredible speed. Well, don't tell me that these ridiculous 200 kilometers an hour flying among trees on this sneaky road are less scary and don't give the perception of speed. So, well, I'd say just remember, make sure you take the time to get the hang of things with the cars I suggested here, and check then if a smile appears on your face while driving. If not, well, sorry for stealing your time. Otherwise, come looking for me on the servers for some good time racing together. See you on the tracks, bye!